My name is Zach Brooks, and I want to turn this into this. This is a 40-yard container of food waste. We get one of these a week that we turn into food for our chickens and our worms and our composting process. Horse manure is delivered here once or twice a week from the stables around the corner. We get all of their horse manure, we hot compost it, and then we feed it to our worms. So this is our worm beds, and this is where we turn garbage into worm castings. We add approximately an inch of food waste every week, and we cover that with a light layer of mulch. The worms then eat through that and turn it from food waste into a really effective fertilizer for your soil. This is our raised bed tomato plants. These have not been fed anything except our worm castings and our compost. It's a no-till process. We don't disturb the ground. Each plant that's grown provides nutrients for the next cycle of crops that come through it. And if you look around, this is an area that's covered with mulch and kept appropriately watered and soil that's strengthened with our worm castings. This captures carbon and leaves it in the soil. We don't use anything on this soil except other people's garbage, sunshine, and rainwater.
Okay, everyone. So now you know a little bit about the Arizona Worm Farm, but let's meet Zach Brooks. I'm going to actually turn this over to our presenter to talk a little bit about himself and how he got into worm farming.
I am, let's see, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. So my name is Zach Brooks. That is the best picture of me I've ever had, and I still look like that. Standing in our raised beds. The Arizona Worm Farm has been
Hey, Zach, sorry, one second.
Been out here for 3 years.
Can you turn on your video? Oh,
yep.
There we go. We see you now. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, we didn't see you at first.
Got it?
We're good to go.
Okay. All right. So I'm good with worms, and not so great with technology. You just have to coach me through this. We use waste byproducts to grow food and compost. We're now up to about 180 yards a week that we are feeding to worms and to flies and other things that we grow out here. We have two principal functions. We do what we call vermiculture, which is raising and breeding worms. We have a special worm breeding process where we raise about 40,000 worms a week. And we sell those mostly to backyard gardeners and composters and teachers for classrooms. We also do vermicomposting, where we use worms to turn garbage into the world's best fertilizer. And we're producing about a ton of worm compost a week. So you want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah. Hold on, bear with us one sec.
Okay, so on the lower right-hand side, you can see a picture of the farm as it looks today. That video was taken about 2.5 years ago, and we've grown considerably. We have now got about 1 million worms. About 10,000 of them are specifically engaged in a breeding process where we try and produce as many worms as we possibly can. The rest of them are used for composting. The goal of our farm is to create a fully sustainable, off-the-grid environment where we take only sunshine, rainwater, and other people's garbage and turn it into food, shelter, education, and entertainment for ourselves. So we're currently producing enough eggs and vegetables to feed our 7 employees. And even have a little left to donate to local food banks and sell in our weekend markets. We originally started raising worms to be a protein source for our hens. We found that we couldn't breed the worms fast enough to be able to feed worms to hens for a protein source. And so we started also raising black soldier flies. The black soldier flies eat pure garbage and turn that pure garbage into 40% protein and 10% fat, which we use as a feed for our hens. We're working to create a fully sustainable farm with zero waste. We have 2 major projects in the sustainability realm for this year. One is to bring in a diesel cooker so that we can turn used vegetable oil into fuel for our tractors. The other is to find an acceptable alternative to plastic bags for the compost that we sell. We sell a couple of thousand bags of compost a year, and we've removed all the rest of the plastic from our process. Everything else that you buy out here comes in a recyclable container, but the bags for the compost is our biggest challenge, and we're working to get rid of that. We offer tours and educational programs for kids to come out and see how we raise worms, how we turn garbage into food, and how we can use worms to create better soil.
Awesome. Well, on the topic
we
of...
also have...
Sorry, I was saying on the topic of schools, someone actually asked a question. How can schools donate their food waste? Do you accept food waste? Oh, okay.
No, we are, the amount of waste that's available in the city is gigantic. And so we've worked with a couple of schools to try and create small composting processes. And to be brutally honest, y'all produce way too much garbage for us to consume. We also spend a lot of time making sure that all of our waste is pre-consumer waste. And so we're just not handling post-consumer waste. It makes it very challenging. We've worked with a couple of schools to set up internal composting and vermiculture projects at the schools. Those work better than trying to transport waste to us. So we'd love to work with you. If you're interested in a composting project or a worm project, we'd love to work with you on that project, but we're just not set up yet to handle the volumes of garbage that most schools produce. And we're not set up to separate it in ways that make it smart. We are working on a program with ASU School of Sustainability to try and develop that. And we've been approached by the city of Scottsdale to do something for their city municipal buildings.
Very cool.
So give us another year and we should be able to solve that problem.
Someone did have a follow-up question though. They wanted to know if they can do virtual tours for their students. And then also, can their school purchase worms to start their own worm farm?
Right, so I have not yet done a virtual tour. I would love to do that with anyone that would like to give that a shot. There's no compelling reason why we can't. We have discontinued our live tours until we figure out what we can do relative to all the virus restrictions. But I would love to do a virtual tour. Would love to try it out and work with anybody. So you have our Facebook and contact information. And so if that's something that you'd be interested in doing, by all means, reach out to us and we'll make that possible. We'd be happy to walk you through the breeding process and the screening processes and the composting processes. We would absolutely love to do that. In terms of getting worms for schools, we have 3 programs that I'd love to share with you. The first is any interested teacher, we will donate a worm bin and a pound of worms if you're willing to set up a worm program. We have basic curriculum for ages ranging from about 2nd or 3rd grade all the way up to 5th or 6th grade. We find that kids younger than 1st or 2nd grade just don't really get it. It becomes about playing with worms, and that's not always a wonderful pet. And the older kids, we have different programs for, and the individual worm bin just isn't a perfect answer. So number one is if you just want to do worm composting in your class, send us an email or call us. We would be happy to donate a worm bin. If you need multiple bins, we can offer them at discounts. Second is we are eager and ready, willing, and able to work with any school or any classroom that wants to do something on a larger scale. The caveat is you really need a motivated individual at the school to make these things work. Worms are bugs and they're hard to kill, but it is like having a million pets, and they do need food and water and maintenance on a regular basis. And so we do need someone who wants to be a champion for that, to be able to really make that happen. And third, we'd love to coordinate those in-school things with visits to the farm, because we do some things here in bigger and broader ways. And in all of those, we'd love for you to incorporate discussions of sustainability and zero waste and recycling as part of those lessons.
Mm-hmm. And for those wanting Zach's contact
Other
information.
questions?
Oh, yes. But before that, there were a lot of people who wanted your contact information. So I just wanted to let everyone know we will be posting that. We'll put it on our teacher resources page. And then we also have a slide coming up with that information. So you can not only contact Zach and his team, but we'll also have the information for their office and any social media that they may have. So I do have one more question though before we move forward. Oh, sorry, what?
Let me make one comment about that.
Yeah.
If you're interested in a worm bin for your classroom, and again, we're happy to donate worm bins for classrooms. June and July are terrible times to try and start a worm bin. So think about it for October and November. It's just way easier in our winter.
And this was kind of going back to our earlier question, but someone asked about your sources for waste vegetation that you feed your worms, and how do you win over those sources in order to have that?
Yeah, so it's super easy. We get our vegetable waste from a company called Taylor Farms. Taylor Farms makes bagged salads and fruits for grocery stores. And so they produce 2 40-yard containers a day of pre-consumer food waste. And they would like us to take all of it, and frankly, we just can't handle it yet. So we get 2 days a week, we get one of their waste dumps. And I've found that conversations with people that are producing that have been super easy. Press Coffee gives us their coffee. A brewery called Wren Brewing on 24th Street gives us their spent grain. Ponderosa Stables gives us their horse manure, and the city of Phoenix has a program to reduce the amount of green waste that goes into their landfills. And so we get ground landscape waste from the city of Phoenix. Sources of compostable materials is actually really easy to find. We'd like to get to a level where we can handle more waste. We're working towards it, but right now we have to even limit the amount that we get.
Makes sense. Well, we are running short on time, so I think it'd be really cool for people to see how exactly this all works, because there are a lot of questions about how to maintain that and how to keep worms out of the sun. So I'll just turn that over to you.
Cool. Let's go to the next slide. So we do hot composting. That's the upper left-hand corner. Those piles are piles of, so we hot compost. We're mixing according to our formulas and watering that and turning it. When it starts to cool, on the upper right-hand side, we bring them inside under shade. And the lower left side is what the face of those wedges look like. So we're feeding compost. After it's been pre-composted, we're feeding that to the worms. We feed them about 1 inch a week. It's a 25 to 30 square foot face on each of our wedges. And so there's about 25 to 30,000 worms in each of our wedges. And we currently have about 600 linear feet of wedge space, which gives us 600,000 worms in our worm wedges where we do composting. It takes us 2 to 3 months to do the pre-food composting, and then 6 to 7 months for the worms to consume all of the organic material. New food is fed to the face of the wedge. The worms will follow the food across the face of the wedge, and what is left behind is as close to pure worm poop, worm castings as we can get. The worms do great here in the wintertime. In the summer, we give them a little extra care. So in the summertime, we'll sprinkle those wedges, which you see on the upper right, with a light layer of mulch, and we'll water them a little extra. So the wedges get watered in the wintertime about once or twice a week. They get watered about 4 or 5 times a week in the summertime. And worms, unlike people, lose water weight over the summer. So a worm will lose 40 to 60% of its body weight as it gets hot. So if you come out here, you bring your class out here in November and you reach into the face of the worms, face of the wedges, you'll get a handful that looks like that one on the lower right with lots of big fat worms. If you come out here today, that handful will have more worms in it by volume, by number, but the volume will be a little slower because they'll be a little skinnier. And I've forgotten what the next slide is, but if you want to click to the next slide. Right, so we do our worm breeding in an insulated breeding environment that we keep at 75 degrees and 75% humidity all year round. There's a scientifically perfect number of worms to put in a breeding container, and we actually adjust that. We use a breeding container that should have about 571 worms in it. There's about 600 worms. Worms are single gender, but they need to rub against each other to produce a cocoon, and under that environment, they'll produce a cocoon a week. A cocoon, we screen those cocoons and put them in grow out areas. Cocoon will have between 1 and 4 eggs in it, and so it'll produce a full-size worm about 8 to 10 weeks after that, and each worm can produce 4 babies a week. They'll do that continuously from when they're about 3 months old until they're about 1.5 years old. Worms live about 18 months, but on average about 18 months. They can live as much as 5 or 6 years. It's a cool process. You should come out here and see it.
Very cool. Well,
Any
now I know
questions on that?
everyone is dying to hear about the soldier flies, and we do have a question that goes along with that, but I'll let you talk a little bit about it first.
Right, so we needed something that would dramatically impact the amount of waste that we were getting, and something that would eat. So we don't feed our worms, meat or cheese, and so we needed something that would eat lots and lots of garbage of lots of different varieties, and we needed something that bred super fast that our poultry liked to eat that would provide that. So the black soldier fly larva, and you're looking at a close-up picture of what the larvae look like. They eat about 50 times their body weight in garbage. It's the only stage of the insect that eats. So once the live fly pupates, the live fly doesn't have a mouth, so it doesn't carry disease. But it also, all the live fly does is breed, lay eggs, and then die. The female of that fly will lay between 500 and 800 eggs. So you see that we can take 2 or 3 of those eggs and keep them and use them to breed more live flies, but it gives us 500 of those larvae to feed to hens and poultry. We're currently producing about, 40 or 50 pounds of larvae a week, and we're limited only because we're just not selling we just haven't figured out how to sell it really efficiently or effectively. Once we get that figured out, we'll ramp that up. They'll eat all kinds of compost. They'll eat meat and cheese as fast as you put it in there. They will lower, we put them in 4 inches of garbage, and they lower it to 1/8 of an inch in 7 days. So it's absolutely amazing, fun to watch, and it produces abundant protein for our hens.
It's truly incredible. Someone asked,
Question?
is there a way to scale up the black soldier fly so that you could compost post-consumer waste or resources?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And the reason that we haven't is mostly related to zoning restrictions and City of Phoenix issues. We get waste and process it as feed for animals and as an on-farm situation. In order to take in lots of waste, there's a whole different set of rules that we're just not gonna go through that process. We're not interested in being waste management. We're interested in being a circular farm, sustainable farm. So we're planning to ramp that up a bit, but only enough to meet our needs in our current supplies. Interestingly, so I'm fascinated by this, as you can tell. It's a tremendous source of protein, can easily replace fish meal, and what we call waste fish is food for tuna and other big animals that live in the ocean. And so we harvest waste fish, and we really ought to stop that process. So we can do that. We can create protein substantially less expensively than and certainly with less environmental impact. That's a soapbox, and I won't get on it, but I'm fascinated by this process. We're going to ramp it up a bit to be able to meet all of the protein needs on our farm and hopefully on other farms in the relative near future. Really a cool process, really interesting, and for those of you that want to do a virtual tour, I'd love to do a virtual tour for you and show you how it works and what it does. There are many third world countries that use black soldier fly to reduce the amount of waste that they, as a mechanism for waste management and waste control. We don't do it here in Phoenix because it's just so cheap to dig a hole in the desert and bury it there and pretend it doesn't exist. But it's certainly something that we could do.
Thank you. And so just have
you have on the screen.
Oh, yeah. So
Sure,
this is for contact information, but we do have one wrap-up question about the soldier flies. Someone asked if they could be an additive to soil as well.
Yeah. So the black soldier fly frass, their poop is a wonderful soil additive. It tells the plants that there are bugs present before bugs are actually present. And we'll see a structural change in the development of the plant to protect itself from pests from the inside out. So their frass is a really good additive. Black soldier flies added to your compost pile are voracious eaters. So you just need to know that they're going to outcompete everything else that's in the compost pile. They're going to take your compost pile down. So if you're composting in your classroom or in your house with an eye towards using that compost in your garden, adding the black soldier fly, just recognize that it's going to reduce the amount of compost that you get at the end. So they will reduce it by as much as 85 or 90%. So if you have a big old giant pile of compost and you want to bring it down to a tiny, small, manageable amount, black soldier flies are awesome to add that. If your goal is to produce lots of compost to use in your garden, you probably don't want to add black soldier flies.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of great information you gave to us, and I know a short amount of time, but we really appreciate it. We have your contact information up there. And then I know I said that last one was our wrap-up question, but we did have one more, and so I'll go ahead and ask it. Does coffee in the soil affect the survival of worms?
Coffee is an awesome additive. You got to put as much of it as you possibly can in the soil. Worms love coffee. Worms don't have a brain, but they're instinctive animals, and they're remarkably efficient at composting material. They are attracted to material as it is decomposing, and they will stay away from material until it decomposes enough for them to consume it. So all of those things you read on the internet about worms don't like citrus, or worms don't like onions, or or any of those other things are simply not true. You need to be careful about what you add in a small bin. So if you have a small worm composting operation, a little bin that you have in your classroom, you don't want to put a ton of coffee grounds in it. But in our wedges, we put unlimited citrus, unlimited onions, unlimited coffee. We don't have any issues at all, and the worms will eat it all. Worms particularly like pressed coffee.
Oh, wow. And we did notice while we were out there, I know it's unfortunate that everyone couldn't come and visit the farm themselves this time around, but the fragrance of your compost was actually pretty great. At least I thought so. So you guys might have to come take a look at the Arizona Worm Farm once you get the chance. In the meantime, I have a feeling a lot of people will be reaching out for those teacher kits to get some worm bins set up in their schools. But that's about all the time we have. Thank you so much, Zach Brooks. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you.